Am I right, sir, or am I wrong? Jon Gruden is gone from the Las Vegas Raiders. Did he resign? Was he fired? They're both one and the same at this point in time. But the question, though, is, Ralph, how did it come to this? So, for anybody who doesn't understand, he actually got caught up in the Washington football team's investigation into their workplace practices that go all the way back to 2009, from when their owner, Daniel Snyder, had to pay $1.6 million to a female employee for something that he did to her on an airplane on the way back from the Country Music Awards. And then they had a person working in their president, Bruce Allen, who was an absolute terror in there as far as it related to workplace and all that. And he was emailing with Jon Gruden back and forth. And Jon Gruden said a bunch of colorful language about the commissioner. He called him a F A G. Well, actually, he didn't even say that. He said the whole damn word. It just, I mean, he went in on black people. He hit the entire bingo card of racism, misogyny. The only people that he left out were Jews. I mean, it was really bad, Ralph.
Yeah, yeah. It's he was emailing with other high level professionals as a high level professional about professionals and using the type of language that you would hear, man, I don't know, in a at a construction site or something like that. But like that's unfair to construction workers. Like they have rules too.
Yeah.
So he the idea that any of this was acceptable because it was private flies very much in the face of like everything we teach our kids about who you are behind closed doors is who you are. What you do in the dark comes to the
But
light.
it's not a private, like, that's the thing is they're like, oh, it was a private email. Yeah, Jon Gruden
No.
sent it from his private email, but then he sent it to a public email, a company's email at Washington, whatever their email attachment, I mean, their email suffix is.
Probably at Redskins, which makes the whole thing even more fitting, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like,
So did he deserve to be fired?
yeah, absolutely.
Was there anything that he could have done to save his job? Because I'm sitting there thinking, all right, had he, after the DeMaurice Smith and the Michelin tires, his lips looked like Michelin tires thing, if he had, because he had to know that these emails were being dug through. So if he had just come out and been like, yo, I'm a different person. I said a lot of hateful or mean or bad things back in the day, mind you, but these emails span 7 years. I said these things. I've grown. I've talked to my kids. I've talked to my wife. I realized I was not being a good example and a good leader. I've gotten help, blah, blah, blah. Would that have saved his job if he had gotten out in front of it and pulled an Eminem?
I don't think so. I don't think so because the whole question comes down to if it became public knowledge that your employee hated everyone that wasn't a white man and he was also dumb enough to write it down and repeatedly share it with others on company time, would you fire him? And the only two ways that you can get around saying no are one, the incredible like point of view of like, hey, it's none of my business how he represents my company, which like your company is your business. It's literally your business, not your personal business, your actual business. And there's absolutely no way that Mark Davis could have had Jon Gruden representing him week after week in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas,
Oh, with the first openly gay player on his roster, too?
right, with the first openly gay player on his roster, a roster full of black players who were wondering why it wasn't enough for him to say what he said about DeMaurice
Boom.
Smith, but then all of a sudden we enter like Dave Chappelle land, where wait a minute, one minority being offended isn't good enough, but if there's specific minorities that are offended, then that's too much. Which the entire black community has to be looking at that like,
Ex-
why,
Bro,
why are we not enough here?
Bro, it's
I don't know.
mind blowing because had it just been the comments about black players and all of this and DeMaurice Smith, everybody would have just, yo, it's a long time ago. He clearly doesn't dislike black people or have any feelings about them because he coaches them. Everybody says this. And when you actually had Tony Dungy and Mike Tirico cape for him on Sunday night, I thought that that was super premature because it was obvious that if he said that about DeMaurice Smith, just logic tells you people don't say those things in a vacuum. So there was going to be other things that came out.
That's
So
just it. That's just it. You hit the nail on the head. When you ask, was there anything that John Gruden could have done to save his job by getting out ahead of it and saying like, "Hey, I'm different now." You apologize for mistakes. You apologize for missteps. You apologize for things that you've learned from. You don't apologize for who you still are. And it would have
mm,
been very, very hard for John Gruden to be able to put something together to say like, "Guys, I'm really sorry I am the way I am." And because it's not like this is the way that these people talk in their personal lives, and I understand the discomfort that a lot of people have with the idea that anything that you said behind closed doors could just instantly be made public and fed to the like cancel hungry mob, but that's not what this is. That's not what this is at all. This is somebody who at their very core, when the moment any type of adversity strikes that goes against something that they believe is a value or something that they think should be the way that things really are, they immediately resort to racial epithets, stereotypes, slurs, derogatory shit toward women. Like that's
okay,
their
how?
default. When
Yep.
adversity strikes, that's their default around people they feel they can trust. And that is not something that you just come back from because you're not down bad. It's who
Okay.
you are.
See, now it brings up two specific conversations. The first thing is that the thing that I think that people are ignoring is, so there was the president of, I'm sorry, there's the founder of Hooters, Ed Drost, who was on the emails, Jim McVeigh, who runs who's an executive with the Outback Bowl, Nick Reeder, who founded PDQ Restaurants, a fried chicken franchise in Tampa, and they're on these emails. And the thing that people aren't talking about is, why did Jon Gruden feel comfortable saying these things to them and sending pictures of topless cheerleaders to the president of the Washington football team? Like, why did he feel comfortable sending it to them? I think that people aren't really paying attention to that because, Ralph, if somebody sent you something like that, how many more email exchanges is it going to take for them to understand that don't send me that?
That would be the next thing I wrote back. And that's the thing that frustrates me is everybody who's out here saying like, hey, should we really be getting into who this man is behind closed doors? You understand the way that we read that when you say
It's a
that, don't you?
leadership position.
But when you tell me, hey, those are his private emails, I'm looking at you and I'm saying, oh, that's who you are too.
Yep.
That's who you are too. But guess what? That's not who I am. Just because you're a certain way doesn't mean you're in the majority, and it doesn't mean that you're right. It doesn't mean that you're right at all. If you're a religious person, if you're in the majority religion in the United States, you follow a guiding set of principles that says not just the things you say out loud and not just the things you do are who you are and how you'll be judged, but it's what you think that never even comes out. It's what's
Mm.
in your heart
The
that
abundance
never
of the,
even comes out.
yeah, the abundance of the heart, and people understand. Okay, so now it brings up the second part of this conversation, Ralph, which is, this was a long time ago. Like, at what point in time is it a statute of limitations on this? I saw Donald Trump Jr. tweet that. Isn't there a statute of limitations on this sort of thing? Bro, no, you are never free from the consequences of your actions. And I do understand the fact that things were socially acceptable a long time ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 60 years ago, like that these things were socially acceptable, but that doesn't make them right. And that you are not free from consequences no matter how long time has passed. Like there used to be a statute of limitations on rape. Now pretty much everywhere there is none. Like it's a the idea that time passes and then your heart doesn't change and now there are no consequences is silly to me because even like when you look at people 60 years ago because people say oh well what if he was using the n-word George all of this why would you say that okay so if somebody who grew up in the 60s, the 50s, 60s, you had like their parents were the people either, like okay with lynching and or like seeing police officers or firemen hose black people down in the streets and all that. So you saw that. You were okay with that. There are consequences even later to that, but that doesn't mean that you can't change or that you shouldn't change. It just means that if people found out that that was you, you're going to have some questions it's fair that you're going to have questions to answer about that.
Right. And it these questions are always asked in a vacuum, and the way that they're structured, the walls are very, very thin. And anytime anybody takes the time to ask a question, I think that they deserve the respect of having that question answered. So let's take that question: shouldn't there be a statute of limitations on the stuff that people say and do that would allow the public to not have to hold them accountable for those things? Okay, so thing number one, he wrote it down like a dumbass. So unfortunately, he contributed to his own demise by making these things permanent, sending them to company email. Like that's something that we have to deal with. So we're encountering these things for the very first time. There is no statute of limitations. We're being introduced to this concept immediately. For the people who were offended, this is fresh and it's happening now. When you introduce the concept of a statute of limitations, you also introduce the concept of, oh, he was allowed to make $10 million a year coaching without actually having to face the consequences for who he is behind closed doors in publicly accessible emails with other professionals. So it should actually be, for people like that who have that type of mindset, a celebration of the fact that you don't actually have to reap what you sow immediately. But it's also that mindset of like, wait, I put a seed in the ground. How come I'm not able to eat the fruit right away? No,
Yep.
you put the seed in the ground, which means the fruit comes later, and some fruit's rotten. So Jon Gruden sowed rotten seeds. Later comes the rotten fruit. We're dealing with it as we get it. Other things, some positions in this world are supported publicly, by public money. So you are the Las Vegas Raiders, and you're going to have to risk the gay community, football fans, not supporting you. You're going to have to risk a large subsection of women who might be excited about the fact that there's female refs, or they might have a gay son, or they might have a black son, or they might have anything where they're conflicted about supporting the Raiders. You have black players on your team who want to understand why the default thing of having a conflict with DeMaurice Smith, and a lot of people have had a lot of conflicts with DeMaurice Smith. It's
Yes.
very central to the job that he works, and nobody's gone after his physical facial features in a way that has been classically racist for as long as I've been alive. There's been no changes, there's been no updates, nothing like that. If this would have happened in the 1970s, but remind you, maybe Jimmy the Greek got kicked off TV for saying that black people had an unfair advantage because they were genetically superior. That happened a very long time ago,
Yeah.
right? Like none of this
And
is
he
new
got
anyway.
kicked off of TV while like racism was still very prevalent. Like
Right.
where it was hey, where it was still like you could be, public with your disdain for other cultures and still keep your job and he lost his job.
Right. And so you have to get into all of that of saying, if somebody asks that question and they're actually being earnest in that question, there are ways to answer it. We're experiencing it for the very first time. His job is actually dependent upon public support. And if that public support is removed because of his behavior, because what we find out about his behavior, then it actually becomes a cost to your employer, even if
Yep.
he agrees with the things that you're saying.
Ralph, you hit the nail on the head, homie. Is okay. Here's an example that I thought of as you were saying, because it's new information to us, like you were saying. So
Right.
if you find out that your wife cheated on you 7 years ago, it's old to her if she says, Ralph, Ralph, this was 7 years ago. I'm a different person, like blah, blah, blah. But you just found out about this today. How's that going to play? If she's like, yo, it's statute of limitations, it's over, Ralph.
Right. And but there's this other side of it. If you say like that's not who I am anymore, then the initial reaction to that is, can you prove it? Like
Yes.
then find a journalist you trust who like mutually agreed upon, maybe out in Las Vegas, and give them access to your email inbox.
Yep.
Reach some agreement with them that they can only look for certain terms. Running a control find on your emails in the last 5 years, and we'll see if there's actually been any evolution or any change. But nobody wants to be in that position, especially if that's who you are all the time. And I think the other important thing to point out on to why he never would have escaped this in the first place, George, and this isn't meant to garner any sympathy toward Jon Gruden because he is lying in the bed that he ultimately made, but this was a hit job. This was a kill shot.
Oh,
This
see,
came from the NFL
that's the
leaking very
next
specific things to get him the F out.
that's the next thing. That's the next question, Ralph. Is so Roger Goodell ordered the NFL to comb through 650,000 emails from everybody inside the organization. And Jon Gruden was just collateral damage. But the big question is, why haven't we heard more from why haven't we heard anything about the Washington football team? And also, why do you think that the league did not, in the Colin Kaepernick case, did not want discovery to be done? I think it's because there are owners and other positions of power who, they would be in really bad shape if their emails get combed through, even if they're just looking for Kaepernick. You're gonna run across, oh my God, he signed up for an Ashley Madison account with his work email. He this, he that. I mean, because we saw that. So, like, what do you think about the fact that nothing else has come out about the Washington football team, or do you think that this is just the tip of the iceberg?
Well, I mean, the whole thing about the tip of the iceberg is you don't see the rest, and you're not going to see the rest. The overarching job of the commissioner is to protect the shield. And sometimes protecting the shield includes protecting the owners. Because as much as fans want to believe that they have a stake in the team, as much as players who wear the uniforms want to say that they have a stake in the team, ultimately, this league is 32 people slash groups, and it's the ownerships of every team. The Raiders are Mark Davis. That's what they are. They're not the fans. They're not the city. We know they're not the city. Um, and they're not the players. They're not the players. The actual franchises belong to someone, and the collective of those people that the franchises belong to needs to maintain a certain level of credibility with the consuming public to continue to exist. The motivation of Roger Goodell is always going to be to make sure that the NFL is filled with people who can ensure that the health of the NFL continues. And
Yep.
unless Dan Snyder is in a position where even outside of these emails, it's going to come out that he's a little bit closer to former Los Angeles Clippers owner than
Donald
anything else.
Sterling.
Yeah, unless it's going to come out and it's inevitable that he's another Donald Sterling, if it can be covered up or held back for the health of the NFL in general, that's something that they're going to
Mm.
do. And you have to understand the Donald Sterling stuff was ultimately a choice as well. It takes people who are in charge of molding and shaping and guiding this league to believe in a cost benefit analysis that it would actually be better for the league to get someone up out of there than keep them around. And that was the calculated decision that was made with leaking the emails about Jon Gruden. And you can potentially make the argument, we don't know what Roger Goodell's involvement in this was, or if it was somebody that was ultimately just thumbing through the emails, who happened to be one of the many categories of human being that Jon Gruden obviously has very easily accessible
Yes.
disdain for.
And they
But
were
if John,
like,
but if
mm-mm.
Right, but if if Roger Goodell at any level was made aware of any of this, it's not going to be any skin off his back to say like, oh, you really hate me, and you hate me enough to bring your hate of other people into this. All right, well, have fun on the couch, John. Like that's,
Yeah.
but
He was like,
what
really? Oh, it's not even me. Oh, so you actually used your hate for for me to like peripherally take shots at other people. Okay,
Yeah.
let's just see how this works for you, John.
My biggest frustration in all of this is that somebody on the other end of these leaks learned, either learned or they knew the lesson that it wasn't going to be enough to just be casually racist. That like
Mm.
somebody who leaked this was like, oh man, wait until the NFL players, wait until the black players on the Raiders find out what Jon Gruden said about DeMaurice Smith, and they drop that bombshell, and Gruden's like, I didn't mean it like that, and everybody just kind of shrugged their shoulders. Imagine being in that person's position and being like, holy shit, I guess the rest of it has to come out
Hmm.
because it's
Well,
not enough to hate black people in America.
correct.
And that's
Exactly.
I just, because
So
again, this whole thing was extremely calculated, and if it was enough, if the DeMaurice Smith stuff was enough to get him gone Friday before they went out and played a stinker of a game against the Bears, and you have to wonder what he did, if anything that he did factored into whether his players were playing hard for him or not. If it was enough on Friday, you have to wonder if we would have ever known about the rest of it.
that's a good point. Now, to put a bow on this, Ralph, I saw somebody ask the question. They asked me the question. They said, "So, how long is the John Gruden cooling off period, or is he permanently on ice?"
He should. It really depends on who you are, because if my mentions are any indication of this, I had somebody last night reach out to me and say, that this is all like that we should never hold what somebody thinks in private against them if they're not willing to come out and back it up in public.
What are you
But like,
talking about? Like that's exactly how you're supposed to live. And
right,
and and
right.
and holding, disdain or whatever for people in your heart in private, dude. I actually have more respect for the dude I saw driving the other day that had his Trump stickers, F Biden, F some other groups and all of this stuff. Like it was clear what they think about people out in the world because they had some anti-black bumper stickers, anti-gay, all of this stuff on the car. I was like, I actually respect this person. I respect this person for at least being like I know how to approach you and deal with you. Like I know that you're not a force working in secret in the dark behind me. I would rather know what's in front of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And I just, man, George, it, uh, I think we're going to encounter a lot of people. You saw what Clay Travis just scrambling to find something that his audience would be able to latch onto so that they couldn't potentially ever have the opportunity to look inward and be like, wait, these are the ways I think and these are the things I say. Does that mean I'm a baddie? Like he was like, wait a minute. Okay, so what's out there? Deshaun Watson. Okay, well, Deshaun Watson still has a job, even though he's not playing, and even though there haven't actually been any criminal complaints yet, and it's all being dealt with on the civil end of things. How could the NFL actually endorse the idea of having rappers on stage at the Super Bowl and then say that what Jon Gruden was saying it is inappropriate? And so you literally have to paint this situation to allow people to protect themselves from growth and change.
Yep.
And that's what we need. When somebody gets an infection, it's inside and it festers, and the only way to get it out is to actually cut it open it up and have it heal from the inside out. Most of the ills in this country aren't from people who don't think a thing but then act a certain way that disenfranchises other people. It's from people who think a certain way and then allow other people who are outward with those things to lead them in the way that they provide opportunities, in the way that they vote, in the way that they speak, in the way that they treat others. That's the issue. The issue is always an internal thing, it's always a heart thing. And until you root out the idea that some people are less than who you are culturally, innately, in ways that they have no control over, until you root that out, this stuff is going to continue to exist.
Yep.
These things that Jon Gruden put in his emails, they're burps from what's in the pit of his stomach. This is who he is. And it's a good thing that he's up out of there, but we don't know. We have no control over who takes the reins next and what they do. The fact of the matter is, all we're stuck with as a society is if someone is dumb enough to put it in an email, then maybe we'll find it later on down the road. And so, unfortunately for Jon Gruden, he's a fucking moron
Yep.
and
Yep.
he's out of a job.
Yep. 100% right. Well, if you guys want to hit us up, 818-293-7547 or shoot us an email, I'm mad at unafraidshow.com.